Bryan Danielson also suffered a couple of different injuries. One was to his arm, and then more recently he suffered a broken orbital bone because... but here's something else, though, is that because reasons that nobody can fathom, he was told that the company needed him, and he's basically returned to wrestling too early. Now, he's given himself a self-imposed time to retire at some point this year, probably around the Wembley show in August, I imagine, but who knows. But he also tweeted about his upcoming match with Okada at Wrestle Kingdom 18 for New Japan, which I think is happening either today or yesterday as we're recording this. Danielson referenced the last time they wrestled in AEW, and he also said this: "And because I wrestled for another 10 minutes with a broken arm, and because I fought through, I couldn't hold my son for 2 months. I still don't have full strength in my right arm because I did come back a little bit early, because I came back when people needed me to come back." So it seems that Bryan Danielson is getting injured a lot and then returning too quickly constantly.
Well, there's a lot to be said for a guy with an attitude like that. He does what needs to be done regardless. And by him to say, I'll come back, but I'm not ready, and as everybody knows, I broke my arm, which that kind of lifts him in status level with me, because a guy that'll do that, because he's a guy that I was reading about when he was still on the independents, and wrestling was everything to him. Everything. Now, I think to be successful at a lot of things, you have to just devote your life to it. And he did that. Personally, talking for myself, I never had that attitude. I said, it is what it is. And you tell me to get in the ring and go 15 minutes. Okay, I'll get in the ring. I'll go 15 minutes. But I'm not going 20. I'm not doing 25. I'll do what you ask me to do when you ask me. But if Bryan would get in there and he didn't have any time constraints, they tell him to go 15 minutes, he might go 30, but it'd be a great match. Nothing to bitch about. He just gave the paying customer, the wrestling fan, he gave them a show, which I like the attitude, and that's how he's gotten as far as he's gotten. When they first put the title on him,
in WWE.
Yep, in WWE, it went on and on and on, and that became his trademark. I'll do what has to be done. And he got people's respect. So anyway, I think that I've been in house shows with him, and when he would finish wrestling, the people would stand up and just shake their head like, wow, boy, he reached down and pulled it out of the bag tonight. And that raised him in everybody's eyes that he's a guy that will do what has to be done. My hat's off to you, Mr. Bryan, because I think you're the epitome of what great wrestlers are, or one way to get there. You got to devote your life to it, and he did. So good for him.
The other thing I wanted to bring up is I mentioned the orbital fracture earlier. And
is that right here?
Yeah.
Ooh.
It's not a fun one. Definitely not. And
see, I've never been hit here.
No?
Because it's hard to get hit when you're like this.
I was going to say you don't recommend it. I don't recommend it.
You're turning your head away, so anyway, and putting your hands up.
Offering money with one hand.
Someone said, put your hands down, I can't touch you. I said, that's the reason I'm putting them up, you moron. But you'll see, if you're watching the ring sometimes, a guy that puts his hands up, that means the other guy's very lax in his delivery because they don't want to get hit. I don't blame them.
I don't blame them.
Go ahead.
So with his orbital injury, I think he was supposed to spend, I don't know, maybe 2 months off or something like that, healing it, but he ended up coming back a lot early because Tony Khan had booked a G1 style tournament. If you're familiar with G1 tournament in Japan, it's essentially various brackets and everybody wrestles everybody, and then the people with the most wins and the most points end up in the final and that kind of thing. And that ended up eventually being John Moxley.
Say you have 12 guys.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
Okay, so you can have a G1 tournament with 12 guys.
Yes, there were
with
six
different
on one
matches.
side.
Yeah.
Six on one side, 6 on the other side, and they all fight each other over 6 matches. And then the person who won the most on side A fights the person who won the most on side B, and that person's the winner.
Okay, how many matches do they have on each side? 6?
6, yeah.
And then the leaders of those 2 brackets.
Then they're the finalists.
Face off.
Yeah,
I got it. That's called a G1.
Yes. Well, it's what New Japan has done for decades now, and that's the G1. Anyway, so Bryan Danielson always wanted to do a G1 kind of tournament, but apparently Tony Khan placated him by coming up with their own style of G1 tournament. But the only thing is that they sort of rushed Daniel Bryan. I'm going to call him Daniel Bryan for the rest of my life, Bryan Danielson back from his orbital injury to take part in this tournament. But it sort of makes no sense to me why it had to be in December when it could have just waited a few weeks and been in January. So what I'm saying is they sort of rushed Bryan Danielson back from injury to do a tournament that could have been held at any time.
But also, this was Daniel Bryanson's idea.
You're doing it as well. Bryan Danielson. We'll never get his name right. WWE's messed it up.
What name does he have? Bryan Daniels?
Bryan Danielson. That's his real name, but he was called Daniel Bryan for so long, I can't get his name right.
I can't either. But I know who you're talking about. I think everybody else does too.
Yeah.
But it was his idea to have it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that was what Tony dangled in front of his face. Hey, we're going to do it. And this is the date. Can you make it? You ever think about it like that?
Really?
So since he suggested it, he kind of more or less had to do it because of his attitude about the business.
He's also recently said, I think today, as we record this Thursday, that Bryan Danielson, if I finally get his name right, has basically said after he retires this year, he's semi-retiring. He's going to do about 5 to 10 matches per year. So basically what Roman Reigns is doing now already, it seems like.
Well, we'll see if it works out for him. But I'm a big fan of Bryan Danielson.
Well, there we go.
Bryan Danielson, is that his name?
That's actually right, yeah.
So he had, Bryan Daniels was in WWE.
Danielson.
Or Daniel Bryan.
Daniel Bryan was in WWE. Yeah.
It's confusing.
I know.